All right, everyone. So I want to talk to you guys really about my thoughts on this whole pro-Israel movement. And really, this video is a warning. This is a warning to all of you people who revere and pretty much worship Israel. Now, you're going to say, Ted, I'm pro-Israel, but I do not worship Israel. What are you talking about? Well, here's the thing. The thing about people who are very, very pro-Israel, people who consider themselves pro-Israel, people who are hardcore Zionists, is that they refuse to acknowledge Israeli war crimes. And when you refuse to acknowledge the wrongdoings of your side, regardless of what that side is, guess what? You are in a cult. You're in a cult. So if someone tells you, hey, look, they are members of the IDF who have done war crimes, and war crimes have become very much so commonplace. In fact, war crimes are encouraged, and the people who are reporting on these war crimes are actually members of the IDF, and they are exposing the evils within their own military. People who are pro-Israel will say, well, if you're going to talk about these war crimes, guess what? You are pro-terrorism all of a sudden. You are pro-Islam. You are pro-Sharia law. You're pro-Hamas. You're pro-Taliban. You're pro-Al-Qaeda. And so what is all of this? All of this is just deflection. And it is a clear indication that you people refuse to acknowledge the wrongdoings of your side, the wrongdoings of the government of the country that you so much support. And so what is this? It's a cult. That's what this is. You are a part of a cult. So this is my warning to you people who revere Israel so much. You are a part of a cult. And you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of the Roman Catholic Church, the Vatican. When you see all of these reports of how the Vatican has covered up for pedophile priests and priests who are sexual predators and deviants, and then you see all of the Catholic laity, all of the lay people in the Catholic Church defending their priest even though their priest has been exposed as a sexual predator, that is a cult. When you refuse to acknowledge the wrongdoings of your religious institution, of your country, or whatever government that you have some sort of oddball gung-ho fascination with, you are a part of a cult. Whether it's a religious cult or a cult of personality, you are a part of a cult. And the pro-Israel cult is no different. The pro-Israel movement is not exempt from this criticism. It's not exempt from this description. And like many, many cults, the pro-Israel cult is self-destructive. The government of Israel is self-destructive. So let's go into two different faces of this cult. You have the governmental side, and then you have the Christian Zionistic side. So for example, in the Christian Zionistic side, you have a bunch of fanatics who want to build the third temple, and they don't give a damn. They say, we're going to build the third temple, and then you have some lunatic, oddball weirdo from Texas who's a cattle rancher, and he breeds red heifers because some lunatics over there in Israel say, well, we need red heifers without any blemishes, just as it says in the Bible, and so we have to sacrifice these red heifers. We got to kill them and shed the blood in the third temple. So in order for the Messiah to come, we need to have the red heifer and the temple and all this stuff. And then you have these Christian Zionists who come along and they say, great, we'll help you. Don't you guys understand? Or sorry, you guys do understand this, but you refuse to acknowledge it because you're a part of a cult. I have to remember that. I have to remember that you guys are a part of a cult, and there are certain aspects of reality that you guys will just clearly and blatantly deny. So the Jewish religion, what we today call Judaism, is extremely anti-Christian. And if you look deep enough into the Talmud, you will find that it has all sorts of really, really horrible and vitriolic and vicious things to say about Jesus. Jesus is boiling in excrement, etc., etc. So the Messiah figure of the people who adhere to this vicious and sinister book is not going to be a holy Messiah of God. It's going to be the Antichrist, because Judaism, as we know it today, is anti-Christian. Therefore, like Islam, it's anti-Christ. So you guys will sit there and bash Muslims, and you'll say, yeah, Islam is anti-Christ, and it's the religion of anti-Christ, etc., etc. Okay, fine. That is legitimate. But for some strange reason, Talmudic religion, the Talmudist cult, gets a pass. It gets a pass all of a sudden. And you guys don't want to acknowledge the Antichrist spirit that is so inherent in the Talmudic religion. Not only that, but you guys go so far as to say that we need to help the Talmudists usher in their Messiah, which is going to be the Antichrist. That's the Antichrist right there. Perhaps it's not the Antichrist. Perhaps it's going to be a Antichrist. I'm not sure. But whatever it is, it's Antichrist. It's anti-Christian. And you guys want to usher in this Antichrist. What do I call people, or what would you call people who deny reality in the name of a religion? Oh, a cult. It's a cult. You guys are in a cult. This is my warning to you guys. So we have to go deeper. All right, we have to go farther than that. So you guys want to build this third temple, and you guys want to slaughter some Texas longhorn animal on the temple. And what is that going to do? Well, in order to build a third temple, you're going to have to remove the Al-Aqsa Mosque somehow, or you're going to have to really piss off the Muslims by putting a third temple next to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And what is that going to do? You know damn well that is going to bring in bloodshed. You know damn well that it's going to bring in a slaughterhouse. And you guys don't give a damn. And Muslims will kill Jews, and Jews will kill Muslims, and other countries will get involved, and it's going to cause a bloodbath. It's going to make Israel into a slaughterhouse. But you guys don't give a damn because you're a part of a cult. And like many cults, you guys are self-destructive. Hell, if Israel decided to, I don't know, spark World War III in the name of the third temple or saving the city of Jerusalem, I am pretty damn certain that a whole bunch of these evangelical whack jobs in the U.S. will say, we got to go on crusade just like they did in the Middle Ages. And a bunch of you guys are going to go down there to fight for Jerusalem, and you guys will just end up in the human blender. It's self-destructive. So then you have the religious aspect of it, but then you also have the governmental aspect of it. And so by this, I mean, you have people who will sit there and say, oh, well, the government of Israel can basically do no wrong. Now, I have never heard someone say those words explicitly, but people really demonstrate this way of thinking by their sentences, by what they say, by their actions. So what do I mean by that? So yesterday I uploaded a video. It came out today, and it was about Israeli war crimes. And I talked about several examples of Israeli war crimes. I talked about the kill zones in the Netzarim corridor, which lies right in the middle of Gaza. And basically what was happening was the IDF put a bunch of soldiers there, and they made these arbitrary invisible lines, and then they said, if anyone crosses one of these invisible lines, it doesn't matter if they don't know about those invisible lines, they are to die. That is it. And so they just shoot people. They don't give a damn if the people they're killing are terrorists or civilians. They don't give a shit, and they laugh while they kill. And in one case, and this was talked about in Haaretz, which is an Israeli newspaper, not Al Jazeera, in one article published by Haaretz, it talked about how in one case, the IDF in the Netzarim corridor shot about 200 people, and they went down to look at all the bodies, and they can only confirm that 10 of those people were actually members of Hamas, were actually Hamas combatants. They didn't even know if they were killing terrorists or civilians, and for most of them, it didn't really matter. Now, there were members of the IDF who were really, really they were disgusted by what they saw, and they felt very guilty about what was happening, and so they anonymously reported what they saw to Haaretz. And I talked about these war crimes, and I also talked about the mosquito concept, which is another war crime that was very commonplace in Gaza. I wouldn't be surprised if they're doing it right now. But in the Gaza slaughterhouse that took place before the failed ceasefire, the Israelis were doing this concept called the mosquito strategy or whatever. And what that involved was taking Palestinian civilians and just forcing them to go into random houses to see if there were any bombs in the houses. And the whole purpose of this was, if one of those houses had any bombs, the Palestinian civilian would blow up. So Israel has been using human shields, and the Israeli government tried to make it out that that there were only just a handful of cases like this, and that they were investigating, or that they are investigating, 6 cases of this nature. But then there was this Israeli soldier who anonymously wrote an article published by Haaretz, and he said that if the Israeli government was actually being honest, they would be investigating at least over 1,000 such cases. And he explicitly stated that the mosquito concept was basically commonplace and was effectively policy in the region of Gaza. So war crimes is policy, and war crimes are actually encouraged by certain officials within the IDF, and also by certain politicians as well. And I talked about these things in this video, and I got a number of comments, and these comments were blatantly Hosperus type comments, but all these comments were really just deflection. That's what these comments were. They were just deflection. Why don't you talk about this? You support terrorism, blah, blah, blah. So I'll just read to you guys, I'll read to you guys 4 comments that I got here, just to give you guys an example of what I mean by this cult and why I call it a cult. So here's a comment that comes from a guy named Alex Harmon, and he says, "I agree." This is amazing. He says, "I agree, genocides are wrong. I also agree, love your neighbor as yourself and love one another." So we're dealing with a Christian here. Love one another and love your enemy. What do you think is the solution to a neighbor who keeps fighting and killing your family and hides amongst the population who doesn't necessarily want to be there? Any suggestions? Any suggestions, sir? Peace to all, and may salvation come to those who seek Messiah. Okay. So going to your comment here, right in the beginning of the comment, we completely agree. I agree. This is what you said, Mr. Alex. I agree, genocides are wrong. Right there. Right there. Right there, we agree. End of story. We don't have to go any further than that. Genocides are wrong. And what I said in my video, that this comment is a response to, was that we can see the foreshadowing signs, the foreshadowing and foreboding signs of a genocide. Because you have the Israeli government explicitly talking about relocating Palestinians, moving Palestinians into a particular zone of Gaza, and basically emptying out most of Gaza of its civilian population. And then just forcing all the civilian population into one area of Gaza. You know what that sounds like? That sounds like something out of the movie Children of Men. And if you guys have not seen that film, I highly recommend it, because it is truly a masterpiece. Children of Men is definitely on my top 10 list of best movies of all time. Right up there with Braveheart, and Braveheart's on my number 1. And in this film, all refugees, all immigrants in the UK are forced into one zone. And then in this movie, the British Air Force just bombs the whole place into oblivion, essentially just nukes the whole damn place and kills everyone inside of it. And I saw that film, and eventually I put 1 and 2 together, and I said, oh, that's Gaza. That's Gaza. That's what the Israelis want to do. The film is almost prophetic. So they want to push everyone. They want to concentrate the population into one zone. You mean like a concentration camp? Yeah, that's what a concentration camp is, right? It's concentrating a people into one area. So I said these are the precursing, or these are the foreshadowing signs of a genocide. And I made a comparison to the Armenian genocide. Because if you look at, and I also talked about the Jewish Holocaust as well. If you look at the Jewish Holocaust and the Armenian genocide, in both of those genocides, The perpetrators did not begin the policy of genocide by saying, we're going to kill people. They began their policies of genocide, be it the Ottomans or be it the Germans. They began their policies of genocide by saying, we are going to relocate a certain people. We're going to relocate the Jews to Poland. We're going to relocate the Jews of Austria to Poland. We're going to relocate the Armenians of the Ottoman Empire to Syria. Oh, we're just being relocated. And the Ottomans made a great effort to make it seem like the relocation policy was completely benign and harmless. And they would go so far as to tell the Armenian women, oh, ladies, pack your bags, take your makeup with you, dress up nicely. We're going to take you to a nice place. Take your jewelry with you. And they were so convincing that they believed it. And then these Armenian women would take their jewelry with them, take everything with them, and then they would be butchered and their jewelry would be robbed. So when I hear Israelis saying, oh, we're going to relocate people, that's a precursing sign to a genocide. That is what I said. And you begin your comment, Mr. Alex, by saying genocides are wrong. And that is what I said in my video. And I said, every single genocide is done under a pretext. It doesn't matter if it's the Holocaust, doesn't matter if it's the Armenian genocide. Every genocide is done under a pretext. If you look at how the Ukrainians butchered the Poles, if you look at how the Croatians butchered the Serbs, if you look at the Sabra and Shatila massacre that happened back in 1982, in which Lebanese fascists butchered at least 1,000 Palestinians in a 3-day duration. All of these crimes were done under pretext. What's a pretext? Pretext is a reason that you give to do something that isn't actually the reason why you're doing that something. So if you say we have to kill these people in the name of fighting terrorism, terrorism is the pretext. Every genocide is done under a pretext. And if you do not understand this, you will fall for the pretext. That is the bottom line. And I said, no, and this is what I said in my video, no matter what the pretext, genocide is wrong. And we agree, Alex. You said genocide is wrong. That's it. That is it. And I want to ask you a question, and this is a question to all of you people who worship Israel or revere Israel or whatever. Do you agree with the IDF taking at least over 1,000 Palestinian civilians and forcing them to be human shields? I just want a yes or no. Because, we bash Hamas for using human shields, and we should bash Hamas for using human shields, but we don't criticize the Israelis. Why? Why don't you guys criticize the Israelis for using human shields? Oh, because you're a part of a cult. It's a cult of personality. And you say, any suggestions? Any suggestions, sir? Sir, any suggestions? Oh, here's a suggestion. How about Netanyahu not supporting Hamas, which is what Netanyahu did for years? His Likud party supported Hamas for many years. They facilitated the funding of Hamas through Qatar. How about that as a start? And here's the thing is, are we going to support war crimes? That is my point. I'm not saying that we should support terrorism. I'm not saying that we should support Hamas. My whole point was, we are seeing the precursing signs to a genocide. And what do you think about that? You say genocides are wrong. That's it. We agree. No further questions. I don't have to go further. That's it. That's it. And do we agree that Israel should kill every single Palestinian in the name of fighting terrorism? Is that what we're coming to? Is this the condition that we are going to reduce ourselves to? Here's another comment that I got from Nicholas Valdez. And he says, this is what I mean by deflection. Right now, the Uyghur Muslims in China are going through a genocide, and the Muslim would say nothing. Forced sterilization, forced to mate with ethnic Chinese men. For one thing, I'm not Muslim. So me talking about Israel wanting to do genocide has nothing to do with Islam. And it has everything to do with something called humanity. Have we forgotten that or what? And here's the thing. Is if the Chinese are doing abuse of Muslims, they're also doing it under a pretext. I mean, communists persecuted Muslims. The Soviet Union persecuted Muslims, and they did it under a pretext. The Soviet Union persecuted Christians, and they did it under a pretext. If China is persecuting Muslims, they're doing it under a pretext. And are you going to say that that's wrong? If you think that China persecuting Uyghurs is wrong, then why aren't you also criticizing Israel? Oh, I see, because it's deflection. Oh, I see, because you refuse to acknowledge any wrongdoing done by Israel because you're a member of a cult. And here is another comment I got. This is from Black Raven, and this guy says, so now you are supporting terrorists? So all of a sudden, this is how you know you're dealing with the cult. When you criticize the wrongdoing of the cult and you are accused of being some kind of a criminal. This is what the Church of Scientology does, by the way. So when someone is a member of the Church of Scientology and they realize that they are in an abusive cult and they want to leave, the Church of Scientology will begin a smear campaign against that person, and they will accuse that person of all sorts of crimes, and they will go around that person's neighborhood, and they will say, this person is, boom, name your type of criminal, and they will accuse that person of doing crimes. So if I am a member of the Church of Scientology, and I decide, you know what, I don't want to be a part of this group anymore because it's a cult, and I all of a sudden do YouTube videos exposing the abuses done by the Church of Scientology. And then all of a sudden, members of the Church of Scientology are attacking me and calling me a criminal. We would just say, oh, this is how cults act. Now, if I criticize Israel and I get accused of being a terrorist or supporting terrorists, you guys are really no different than the Church of Scientology. You guys are a part of a cult of personality. Now, this reminds me of the war in Iraq. So we had the war in Iraq, and this was back in the early 2000s. It was right after 9/11. Everybody was in shock. Everybody was traumatized by seeing the two towers just going down, and so everybody was freaking out. And everybody was in such a state of panic that the government could do anything that it wanted, and it pretty much did whatever the hell it wanted. The government said, okay, we got to go to Iraq, even though Iraq had nothing to do with it, and we got to bomb the shit out of that country, and it doesn't matter if we kill 1 million Iraqis. And how did the American population react to this? Initially, we thought it was great. We were clapping our hands. In fact, we had a whole music industry. We had an entire music industry that was based around the idea of the American cult of personality. And we had songs and that were very famous, such as, there was one song, I think it's called The American Way, and it was done by Toby Keith. And the lyrics of the song went something like this: we'll put a boot up your ass 'cause it's the American way. Oh, Uncle Sam, whatever. And people love that song, right? Well, that song is now an embarrassment. Why is it an embarrassment? Because it was all just a part of the trappings of this cult that led people to believe that the war in Iraq was great. And during the war in Iraq, in the initial stage of the war in Iraq, if any soldiers came out and said, shit, we're doing war crimes, those soldiers were accused of being traitors. When you had soldiers who came out from Iraq and they were criticizing the military-industrial complex, they were considered liberal, they were considered traitors. If anyone criticized the war in Iraq, they were called communists, they were called liberal, hippies, whatever. Now, we look back at that attitude, at that behavior with shame. And if anyone today comes out and says, I think the war in Iraq was a great idea, those people are laughed at, mocked, scoffed, looked down upon, and they are shamed. And rightfully freaking so. And the people who say today that the war in Iraq was a great idea are a very small minority of the U.S. population, because we realized that we were all duped and we were all tricked and we were all hoodwinked by the military-industrial complex. We were hoodwinked into corralling ourselves into a cult of personality. And we acted like members of a cult. We had music to support our behavior. We had certain accusations to give to people who didn't agree with us. It was cult-like behavior. And when we were told that war crimes were done, a lot of people ignored them. They ignored those reports. They didn't want to hear about it. When we heard about the killing of civilians in Iraq, we didn't want to hear about it. And why didn't we want to hear about it? Because we were part of a damn cult. So the same goes for this whole pro-Israel thing. You guys are following a cult, and not only is it a cult, it's a self-destructive cult. Now, what do I mean by this? Israel has a very terrible record of supporting things that later on lead to its demise, or that later on will lead to its demise. Case in point, there are videos that you can find of Benjamin Netanyahu telling the American government, telling the US Congress, that we need to take out Saddam Hussein. And all these American evangelicals were saying, ooh, yes, we have to take out Saddam, take out Saddam. And Netanyahu said that if we take out Saddam Hussein, the Middle East will be a better place. And what did we all learn? We all learned fairly quickly that that was all bullshit. It was all bullshit because it made the Middle East into another slaughterhouse. And it didn't make Israel safer. It made Israel more under danger. Why? Because by removing Saddam Hussein, you got rid of the biggest check against Iran. And so removing Saddam Hussein led to the rise of Iran. But the Israelis were pushing the US, they were pushing the Americans to take out Saddam Hussein, only to later bitch and complain and cry about Iran. Well, you guys helped. You guys wanted this. What you guys wanted led to now what you're crying about. And then the Israelis were saying, we have to remove Assad because he's an ally of Iran. So you guys did one mess up, which was removing or pushing for the removal of Saddam. That led to the rise of Iran. And then all of a sudden you were worried about Assad because he was an ally of Iran. And so you were pushing for the removal of Assad. So Assad got removed. And then what happened? Turkey rose up. And all of a sudden we started seeing in real time the revival of the Ottoman Empire. And then Turkey invaded Syria, took it over, and essentially just annexed the damn place, took over the government. Now the freaking Syrian government, whatever that means, is completely under the control of Turkish intelligence. And Mr. al-Shara, who is the face of this flimsy government in Syria, this joke of a government in Syria, can't even do a damn TV interview without getting the permission of Turkish intelligence. I'm not even joking. You can look this up. And the Israelis are now crying, and Netanyahu went to freaking Trump recently, and you know what he did? He begged the Americans, please, America, help us with Turkey. Oh, so first it was remove Saddam, and you guys wanted that, and so, okay, we did it, and you messed up the Middle East, and you don't give a shit because you guys don't have any sense of accountability. And then you wanted the removal of Assad. Okay, we helped you with that. And now you're complaining about the rise of Turkey and you want America to help you. It's a cult. It's a cult. It's a self-destructive cult. We do this for us. Do that for us. Support Israel. If you guys do this, because if you guys don't do this, then you support terrorism. Remove Saddam. If you guys don't want to remove Saddam, then you support terrorism. Remove Assad. If you guys don't want to remove Assad, here come the accusations of what? Supporting terrorism. It's just a self-destructive cult. Why in the hell are people trusting a country that continuously does things that are to its own demise? Why are you, it's like following a freaking heroin addict. It's like following a drug addict and the person's self-destructive. It's like following a cult. I'm going to go follow Jim Jones. And someone tells you Jim Jones is going to lead to your destruction and they don't give a shit. They don't listen to you. They go out and follow Jim Jones. Eventually, there's got to come a point where you're not going to get on the plane to go to freaking Jonestown because you're going to end up dead. There's going to come a point where you just got to let that person do what that person's going to do. Because that person will not only destroy themselves, they will drag you down. into your own destruction. And that's what Israel wants, by the way. They want America to go to war with Iran. They're always trying to pull the Americans to go to war with Iran. They do destructive things like pushing America to remove Saddam, pushing America to remove Assad, and then they want to pull down America and the rest of the world to deal with their own problems. Now, America did contribute to this, but what led to America contributing to this? The pro-Israel sentiment in American society. Now, you could say, well, it's because of America's interest, da, 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 da. Believe me, if there wasn't this overwhelming support for Israel in the United States, you wouldn't be seeing so many policies supporting Israel. You just wouldn't. And here's the thing. Donald Trump was recently talking to Netanyahu, and do you know what freaking Netanyahu said? Oh, you got to help us with Turkey. And you know what Trump told him? Trump told Netanyahu, listen, Natan, listen, Bibi, whatever problems ever happen between you and Turkey, I'm sure we can solve it. But you, Mr. Netanyahu, need to be reasonable. That's what freaking Trump told Netanyahu. He told Netanyahu to be reasonable. Why? Because Israel's not a reasonable country. They do things that are belligerent and that are destructive. And so Trump is telling Bibi, you guys need to cool it and start being reasonable. And that's why, you see, the Americans know it. And why is America being so nice to Turkey? Why isn't America saying, Turkey, ooh, be nice to Israel, Turkey? Why? One word, it's called Dardanelles. That's why. The Dardanelles. Now, we don't call it the Dardanelles anymore. We call it the Turkish Strait or something because Turkey doesn't want to be reminded of World War I and getting its ass kicked. But it's the Dardanelles because I read some things about World War I and I remember it as the Dardanelles. What is the Dardanelles? The Dardanelles is a strait. It is a transition point between the Black Sea and the Aegean Sea and ultimately the Mediterranean Sea. So if you look at a map, and I've talked about this many times, but I'll talk about it again because it's very fascinating. You look at a map, you got the big old fat Black Sea, you got Ukraine over here, Russia over here. Well, this is actually Russia now. So basically you got Russia, and then Turkey over here. Turkey's this big old freaking banana sticking out from the Mediterranean world. And Turkey's sticking out over here. And then you go down from Turkey. So you go to the Black Sea. Okay, from the Black Sea, you go to the Bosphorus. From the Bosphorus, you go into the Sea of Marmara. From the Sea of Marmara, you go into the Aegean Sea. And then from the Aegean Sea, you go into the Mediterranean Sea. That's a lot of seas. That's very geostrategically important. To imagine a pathway from the Black Sea into the Mediterranean, which is one of the most important bodies of water, geopolitically speaking, in the world, and Turkey controls the access way from the Black Sea into the Mediterranean. And which country does America really hate that's locked in the Black Sea? Oh, it's Russia. Russia's locked in the Black Sea. And Russia wants unlimited access for its navy into the Mediterranean because Russia wants to run things. So Russia invades Ukraine, and the Americans tell the Turks, "Hey, Turkey, don't allow Russia to move its navy from the Black Sea into the Mediterranean. You guys have the power to block it." America wants to maintain that power. America wants to maintain that control. And so therefore, it does not want to lose Turkey. So that's why America will kiss Turkey's ass, because of the Dardanelles. That's it. What geostrategic position does Israel have? Oh, I don't know. Its position is somewhere in the Bible, so therefore there's a whole cult that revolves around it. Israel, I guess you could say it's a glorified U.S. military base. It's a nice ally. It's America's foothold in the Middle East. But Turkey has a very, very important geostrategic position because it can block Russia's access from the Black Sea into the Mediterranean. And the Russians and the Turks have been fighting over this access for a very, very long time. And the West has, for a very long time, supported Turkey because Turkey controls that access way. Just look up something called the Crimean War, which happened it started in 1853, and I believe it ended in 1856. The British supported the Turks against the Russians. Why? Because Turkey has such a geostrategic position, and that position is very powerful, and it can be used as a leverage point against the Russians. So if there ever comes a point where America is cornered and it has to make a choice between, oh, I don't know, supporting Turkey and supporting Israel, it's going to be like that scene from Aladdin when the genie tells Aladdin, sorry, Aladdin, I have a new master now. This is why I say eventually I think America will wash its hands of Israel. Not going to happen now. Not going to happen now. But you see what's happening. You see Tucker Carlson being very popular. Candace Owens is very popular. These figureheads are very popular. Who else is there? Dave Smith, very popular guy. They're all very critical of Israel. And Candace Owens was once a part of the Daily Wire. She left the Daily Wire, and now she's more famous than ever. Leaving the Daily Wire and being condemned by Ben Shapiro did nothing to hurt her image at all. It actually helped her image. And how many times do we hear people talking about how they're not going to go fight in a war to support Israel? That is a very, very popular point of rhetoric, and there's a reason for that, because people are sick of Israel. And they're sick and tired of America doing certain policies that are destructive for the cause of Israel. Like, oh, I don't know, removing Saddam, facilitating the ousting of Bashar al-Assad, that sort of thing. But the pro-Israel people don't give a damn. And here is another warning that I have for you pro-Israel people. A lot of people have been turned off by Israel. You see, I used to be very, very pro-Israel, when I was a teenager, very pro-Israel. And when October the 7th happened, I condemned what happened, and I did many videos on what Hamas did, and I still stand by what I said, condemning what Hamas did, because what Hamas did was a crime, and that must be acknowledged. And I will acknowledge the crimes of Palestinians because I don't want to be a member of a cult. But the pro-Israel people, they don't want to do that. And so this reality has turned off a lot of people. I mean, the lack of accountability, this belief that Israel can do no wrong, all these things. A lot of people, you have to understand, a lot of Americans, especially millennials, were raised to be pro-Israel. Seriously, they were raised by the boomer generation, which is extremely pro-Israel. And so millennials grew up being very pro-Israel, and then they read about Israeli war crimes. They read about Israeli war crimes, and then they got turned off. Why do they get turned off? It's not because, oh, well, they just woke up and decided to hate Israel. Now, there are people who hate Israel no matter what. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about people like myself. People who grew up being pro-Israel, who were raised to be pro-Israel. They were raised with that John Hagee Christianity, only to later become disillusioned. The reason why we got disillusioned is, and I'll just speak for myself, the reason why I got disillusioned is not because, oh, I just woke up and decided to be disillusioned. It's because I would read articles. I would read about Sabra and Shatila. I read about Israeli war crimes. And I said, oh, okay, so this whole nice narrative, this whole nice idyllic narrative revolving around Israel is bullshit. And so you just start criticizing Israel, and you criticize Israel. I mean, at least for me, I will criticize Israel just like I would criticize the United States, or like I would criticize Turkey. And I've done many videos criticizing Turkey. I've done even more videos criticizing the Vatican, because I was once a member of the religion of the Vatican, and then I realized, oh wow, there's a lot of evil being done here, and there's a lot of there's a lot of weirdness in this whole group, and I don't want to be one of these people who just indiscriminately follows a religious institution. I will criticize evil when I see it. I will call evil out when I see it. Plain and simple. And when I began to criticize the Vatican, guess who attacked me? Catholics did. Why? Because those people are part of a cult. They refuse to acknowledge the evils of their religious institutions. So this description also applies to people who are pro-Israel. I'm not singling out Israel. I'm not singling out people who are pro-Israel, but I am simply calling out the elephant in the room. And that elephant in the room is that this whole thing's a cult. Now, Israel is a legitimate country. Israel is a nation that deserves to exist, absolutely. But let's not sit here and act like it does no wrong. Now, have you guys ever noticed that when I do these videos criticizing Israel, I will almost always quote Israeli sources? Why? I will quote Haaretz. I will quote Plus 972. That's a newspaper. I will quote The Hottest Place in Hell. That's actually the name of an Israeli newspaper. It's in Hebrew, but it translates literally to The Hottest Place in Hell. These are all Israeli newspapers that are critical of Israel. And they are critical of the IDF. And if you look at the sources, for example, that Haaretz uses, Haaretz will use actual Israeli soldiers as their sources. For example, that article that talked about Israel using human shields, that article was written by an Israeli soldier. So I'm actually giving you guys information not from Al Jazeera, not from some Muslim source or some Palestinian source. I'm giving you guys information from Israeli sources, because these sources are coming from people who are on the inside. They're in the IDF. They're within the ranks of the IDF. So, for example, there was an article that was published by Haaretz back in December of 2024, so very recently, and it talked about Israeli war crimes, and it talked about how Israel was doing kill zones in the Netzarim corridor, and it talks about this Israeli commander by the name of Yehuda Vach. And Yehuda Vach, and this is what this IDF soldier told Haaretz, that Yehuda Vach, being this very elite commander, actually tells his soldiers there are no innocents in Gaza. So if there are no innocents in Gaza, the conclusion from that logic is, oh, they're all terrorists, and therefore they deserve to all be shot. And that's why these IDF soldiers didn't mind shooting civilians. So, but this information isn't coming from a Palestinian source. It's not coming from Al Jazeera. It's not coming from CNN. It's coming from actual people who are in the IDF. So I am quoting Israelis on the evils of Israel, and yet you guys choose to ignore it. This is like when Catholics hear stories from Catholics who talk about how they were abused by Catholic priests, and those Catholic lay people ignore those Catholics who were abused by the very religious institution that they are subscribed to. It's this indiscriminate cult of personality that I have a problem with. And my warning to you guys, my second warning to you guys, is that the way that you guys act has led a lot of people to be disillusioned with Israel. And so people are going to get so turned off by Israel in the Western world that Israel eventually is going to lose its support from the West. And if Israel gets abandoned by Western countries, Israel is alone. Israel is abandoned. And Israel is right next to Turkey. Israel is next to Iran. And these countries want to destroy Israel. And I think eventually that's going to happen. I'm not saying it's a good thing. YouTube, I'm not saying it's a good thing. Not doing that, not supporting it. I am just giving you my prognostication. I'm giving you guys my observation, my prediction. I think eventually Israel is just going to be destroyed as a country. And that's my second warning to you guys. And Netanyahu going to Trump and begging him for help in regards to Turkey, that's not for no reason. That's because Netanyahu knows that Turkey is a huge threat, because Turkey is a NATO country. Turkey has a very legitimate military. Turkey has a very powerful military. It has a huge army. It has one of the biggest armies in the world. It's a serious country, and this is very serious. This is more serious than Iran. This is more serious, or maybe not more serious than Iran. Maybe it's the same as Iran, but it's definitely more serious than Hezbollah, more serious than Hamas, definitely more serious than the Houthis. And Israel is being Israel's being a lot more quiet in regards to Turkey than it is in regards to Iran or the Houthis. Why? Because Turkey is a serious existential threat. And that's those are my thoughts. So those are my warnings to you guys who worship Israel. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.